Hey guys, tonight we're heading back to the gaslit, horse-dung-stained, soot-choked streets of Victorian London. Picture this thick yellow fog curling around crooked lampposts, the air smelling like coal, cabbage, and something vaguely dead. You step off the train or the boat and into a city that feels more like a haunted maze than a capital. You're greeted not by a welcome sign, but by a damp gust of soot to the face. Welcome, you're already inhaling particles of someone else's chimney. Charming. Now, this isn't the London of charming top hats and afternoon teas, no. This is the real London of the 1840s to 1890s, where your odds of surviving the week depend entirely on your ability to dodge disease, filth, and falling bricks. You've probably already stepped in something, don't ask what. And if you're not careful, your coat might catch fire from a gas lamp. You've been warned. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love seeing who's tuning in across time zones. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You take your first real breath, if it can be called that, and immediately cough. Not because you're weak, but because the very air of London in 1850 seems weaponised. There's no EPA, no concern for lung health, just chimneys puffing out soot like industrial dragons. Historians still argue whether Victorian smog did more damage to architecture or to lungs, but given your current state of wheezing, you're betting on the latter. You walk down a narrow street in Whitechapel, buildings leaning like drunks, brickwork crumbling like stale bread. Overhead, laundry swings between windows, and you try not to focus on how close that undergarment is to a pigeon. You notice people covering their faces with scarves, not as a fashion statement, but as a survival instinct. You copy them. Good move. The air's dense enough to chew. A carriage clatters past, splashing you with a mysterious liquid that is definitely not water. Don't sniff it. Just keep moving. Welcome to the city where rain isn't always rain, and mud isn't always mud. Finding your bearings in London is a cruel joke. Street signs are rare, and when they exist, they're spelled like the alphabet had a breakdown. You find yourself surrounded by hawkers yelling about eels, urchins running barefoot, and the scent of something frying, but you're not sure if it's fish or a boot. One local delicacy involves jellied eels, by the way. A true joy for the adventurous palate or those with no functioning taste buds. A friendly gentleman offers to shine your boots. You look down. Your boots are now a unique shade of sludge. He charges you 2p, shines them with spit, then vanishes into the fog. It's impressive, really. You wander through Smithfield Market, where animal parts dangle on hooks and blood runs through the cobbles like water from a gutter. You're learning that Victorian London doesn't waste much, especially not organs. Sheep's head soup, anyone. Then the fog thickens. London fog isn't poetic here, it's practically tactile. You can reach out and touch it. It muffles sound, bends gaslight into shadows, and turns familiar streets into ghostly labyrinths. Some called it London Particular, others just called it suffocating. Historians still debate whether the fog was purely meteorological or made worse by unchecked coal burning. Either way, you can barely see your hand, let alone your destination. You pause by the Thames, a mistake. The stench smacks you in the face like a wet fish. Raw sewage, industrial runoff, rotting things. The river's more cesspool than waterway. This was the era of the Great Stink, after all. Parliament once debated with soaked handkerchiefs pressed to their noses. You wonder how long your nostrils will need therapy. A whistle blows, not for you. It's the sound of another shift change, another fire brigade called out, or maybe someone's horse just collapsed. You're not sure anymore. The noise blends into the city's thumping, grimy heartbeat. You pass a baker's stall. The bread smells good. It also costs more than your daily wage. And if you're poor like most of the city, you'll be living on stale crusts, boiled onions, and dreams. Don't ask what's in the meat pies. Not unless you want to find out the hard way what happened to the missing cat. A child runs by, clutching a loaf. Someone shouts, "Thief!" but no one moves. Too common to care. You think of intervening, but your own stomach growls in agreement. Your coat's damp now. Everything is damp. Your fingers are numb. Your boots leak. And you're starting to understand surviving Victorian London isn't about winning. It's about not losing too fast. And tonight, you're still standing. For now. You find a place to sleep, or at least a place to not die in just off a side alley, tucked behind a row of leaning tenements where the walls whisper and the bricks look ready to weep. Welcome to the thrilling world of Victorian accommodations, where the choices range from awful to unspeakable. If you've got a shilling to spare, you can try your luck at a doss house, a lovely euphemism for a glorified shed filled with the snoring, coughing, and flatulent ghosts of London's underclass. You step into the dim interior, and the first thing that hits you is the smell. It's sweat, mould, unwashed feet, and something suspiciously like pickled herring gone rogue. You pay your coin, maybe even bribe the keeper for a slightly cleaner blanket, and you're handed a spot on a coffin bed. These aren't metaphorical. They're literally wooden boxes you lie inside, just deep enough to keep the rats from licking your ears. Comforting. If you're short on change, you might be downgraded to a rope bed. This marvel of human ingenuity involves leaning forward with your armpits slung over a sagging rope strung wall to wall. No pillow, no mattress. Just the hope you don't fall forward and nose plant on the floorboards during the night. These were popular in flophouses, especially for workers who only needed a few hours of unconsciousness before heading back to coal pits, matchstick factories, or wherever Victorian dreams went to die. Historians still argue whether rope sleeping was better or worse for spinal alignment than the coffin beds. Spines were less of a concern than fleas, really. Let's say your pockets are truly empty. In that case, you seek shelter in a workhouse. Ah, the workhouse. Charles Dickens did not exaggerate. These state-run institutions were supposedly meant to help the poor, but usually succeeded in making them feel punished for existing. You're given bland food, itchy uniforms, and put to labour rock-breaking, oakum-picking, or other tasks designed to crush your will without technically killing you. Some locals used to say you'd be better off in prison. They weren't joking. If all else fails, there's always the church stoop, cold stone steps, open air, and the gentle lullaby of horse hooves, fog horns, and the occasional fight breaking out down the lane. You huddle in your coat if you have one and try to ignore the crawling sensation on your neck. It's probably just your imagination, or a louse, or both. A quirky Victorian trick. Some people pay to share beds, by the hour. Not in the scandalous way. Mind you, just regular shivering Londoners trying to split body heat. One man sleeps from 10p to 2a, then vacates with the next shift. The mattress never goes cold. which sounds clever until you consider the hygiene implications. You overhear a woman brag that her room has a window, another one scoffs hers has two. No one mentions whether they close properly, or open, or leak. Most do all three at once. The definition of luxury shifts quickly when survival's the baseline. Your fellow lodgers are a colourful cast. One's a chimney sweep with blackened fingers and a cough that sounds like a haunted accordion. Another's a washerwoman who sharpens her elbows as she sleeps, just in case. There's a boy who says nothing, just stares at his boots like he's willing them to grow into shoes. And everywhere bedbugs, tenacious, invisible, unforgiving. You scratch absently, trying to tell yourself it's just the blanket's texture. It's not. These creatures are your new roommates, and they are always, always home. You lie back if you can lie back and stare at the cracked ceiling, counting cobwebs like stars. 1, 2, 3. A spider scuttles across your peripheral vision. You give it a nod. It's probably been here longer than you. Outside. The bells chime midnight. A cart rolls past, wheels groaning, and you hear someone mumbling down the street about the dead cart coming soon. Probably just a drunk. Probably. You close your eyes, if only to keep the smoke out. You're exhausted, but sleep won't come easy. Victorian London doesn't sleep, it wheezes, creaks, and moans its way through the night. You pull your coat tighter, or maybe it's just a borrowed sackcloth. Either way, it does little. Your toes are cold, your stomach's empty, but you're horizontal, or near enough, and sometimes. That's the closest thing to safety this city offers. The sun rises late in Victorian London, not because of the hour, but because the fog clings low and stubborn, like a wet wool blanket someone forgot to wash. The light that does filter in is weak and jaundiced, sliding down chimney stacks and catching on the soot-slicked glass of narrow windows. You wake stiff, itchy, and with the haunting realization that you're hungry again. Breakfast time, or more accurately, survival snack number 1. Assuming you're lucky enough to have a coin in your pocket and you didn't lose it to pickpockets or rats you shuffle outside to find food, the smell of coal smoke and boiled cabbage already wafts through the alleys. It's not pleasant, but it is familiar. Street vendors are out in force. A wiry man with yellow fingers and a voice like gravel calls out, "Hot peas and vinegar." Another shouts about penny pie meatish filling. You raise an eyebrow at that last one. Meatish. Suspiciously vague. Let's say you opt for something you recognise: gruel. Yes, the great culinary joke of Victorian England. Watery oats, barely cooked. Sometimes served with a crust of bread that could probably stop a bullet. Gruel isn't tasty. Gruel isn't satisfying. Gruel is warm, and right now, that's good enough. Historians still argue whether gruel was truly intended as food or as a subtle form of character punishment. It was the staple of the poor, the sick, and the unfortunate, which, coincidentally, describes you to a T. The seller hands you a bowl. It sloshes ominously. You take a spoonful, and it's fine, like oatmeal's depressed cousin, but it fills the corners of your stomach just enough to silence the growling. Quirky fact, some workhouses were known to serve skilly, a variation of gruel made with boiled water, flour, and occasional flakes of onion. If you were really blessed, it might include a trace of sweet. Workers sometimes faked illness to get an extra ladle. Around you. Others chow down on more dubious fare. A child gnaws on a slice of bread and dripping, which is exactly what it sounds like, yesterday's bread slathered with the cooled fat from cooked meat. It's greasy, salty, and slightly gelatinous, a culinary delight if your alternative is gnawing your boot. You pass a vendor selling winkles, small sea snails plucked from the Thames or thereabouts, boiled alive, sold in paper cones. A pin is handed to you for extraction. Yes, you're fishing for your breakfast with a metal pin. Welcome to high society. Breakfast might also include boiled potatoes with a dusting of salt or coal ash, depending on the vendor's commitment to cleanliness. A hot potato in hand is at least a portable heater on a cold day. People clutch them like treasure. For the truly desperate, there's always street soup, a bubbling cauldron of unidentifiable contents, sometimes featuring cabbage, bones, old carrots, or the vague shape of something that once clucked. It's hot, it's filling, it might be alive. Best not to stare too closely. You find a stoop and sit down with your meagre bowl. Around you, the city coughs awake, literally. You count no fewer than 7 phlegmy hacks in under a minute. Tuberculosis is basically part of the morning chorus. Nearby, someone selling coffee substitute, brewed from chicory root or scorched acorns. It tastes like roasted regret, but gives the illusion of energy. Real coffee is a luxury few can afford, saved for the middle class and above, who sip it in gaslit parlours with crumpets and the casual ability to breathe clean air. Your breakfast ends too soon. You wipe your bowl clean with a bit of bread, savouring the last lukewarm bite. It wasn't a feast, it wasn't satisfying, but it was calories. That's all that matters. And yet, you're still hungry. Always a little bit hungry. You glance at the child next to you who hasn't eaten anything. She stares at your bowl like it's a banquet. You break your last bite in half and hand it to her. She grabs it and runs. You'll feel that gesture later in the day when your stomach growls louder than your voice. But right now it feels like the only good thing you've done since sunrise. Victorian London isn't generous, but sometimes the people living in it are. You leave your breakfast behind, what little there was of it, and make your way through the grey drizzle towards something resembling a job. But first, you need to dress the part. In Victorian London, clothes are less about fashion and more about staying alive, and staying relatively lice-free, which is already a tall order. Your boots squish as you walk. They've taken on so much damp, they might qualify as amphibious. Your coat, patched more times than you can count, hangs heavy with yesterday's rain, underneath a threadbare shirt, maybe 2 if you're lucky, and trousers that have forgotten what a good fit looks like. The fabric is rough. Everything is rough. Nothing touches your skin without a scratchy reminder of how poor you are. Historians still argue whether working-class Victorian clothing was intentionally uncomfortable as a kind of social control, or if it just ended up that way through sheer poverty and bad wool. But let's be honest, comfort isn't your top concern. Warmth is. You wrap a scarf around your neck, mostly to keep out the coal smoke air that clings to everything. It helps. A little. A quirky trick people used back then. Newspaper insulation. Folded pages of yesterday's Times or illustrated London news stuffed inside shirts, coats, and even trousers. It's not stylish. But who cares if you're swaddled in scandal headlines and Queen Victoria's holiday itinerary if it keeps your kidneys from freezing? You're trying not to step in anything particularly sinister as you cross the street, but you fail. Again, something brown, something slimy, something that used to be a rat. Probably. You scrape your boot on a curb and carry on. Now, You pass a wealthier sort. Clicking along in polished leather shoes and a fine wool overcoat, you can smell the soap on him, actual soap, with lavender or citrus, not the vague smell of lie and desperation. He glances at you and quickly looks away. You've been invisible to his kind since the day you were born. But here's the kicker, even among the poor. Appearances matter. You keep your coat buttoned, your hat, if you have one, pulled low, and try to walk like someone with a purpose. No one wants to look desperate. Desperation is dangerous. It invites pity at best and suspicion at worst. You pass a tailor's shop. The mannequins wear fine frocks and crisp shirts with high collars, the kind favoured by clerks and bankers. You pause, just for a moment, and picture yourself in a clean suit. Not fancy, just whole, just dry. Then someone bumps you from behind, mutters a curse, and the day resumes. Women, too, suffer their own uniform of survival. Stiff corsets even for the working poor, tight petticoats, worn shawls pulled tight across stooped shoulders, gloves with holes, boots with cardboard stuffed inside to cover the gaping soles, dignity held together with pins and stubbornness. And don't get started on laundry. If you're lucky enough to afford a wash, it involves scrubbing clothes in freezing water, beating them against a stone, then drying them near a fire that smells like 5 kinds of coal smoke and last night's dinner. You still end up itchy, always itchy. The richer households, they hire washerwomen, women with red raw hands and bent backs who are paid pennies to carry boiling water and breathe soap steam all day. Some go blind from the lie, others pass out from heat and exhaustion. But hey, the linens are crisp, and then there's the lice. You try not to think about it, but sometimes you see people on the street casually picking at their scalp or scratching their sleeves with a twitchy kind of urgency. The term neat picker wasn't born in metaphor, it was a daily routine. Delousing yourself or a child was just part of the morning. A curious little side note. Some believed camphor-soaked cloth would keep lice away. Others swore by turpentine, soot, or even vinegar rinses. All you know is, nothing really works. The lice always win, and you will scratch your scalp tonight like you're trying to dig for treasure. Despite it all, people still find ways to express themselves. A ribbon pinned to a dress, a hand-stitch patch shaped like a heart, a hat plume from 2 years ago. Still proud, if a bit wilted. In a world where life's grey and dirty, a touch of colour, however small, is rebellion. You button up, you pull your sleeves over your wrists, you look around at the city, gas lamps flickering in the fading morning fog, and you breathe through your scarf to keep out the soot. You are dressed for the day, and for survival, which in Victorian London is really the same thing. You hold your scarf tighter as you weave your way toward the river, nose turned from the worst of the city's stenches, though frankly, there's no true escape. Every breath tastes faintly of ash and sewage. But then something else cuts through the fog, the sharp, pungent stench of something far less metaphorical. Human waste, and not just a little. You've entered the domain of the night soil, men, those valiant, unfortunate souls responsible for emptying chamber pots and cesspits. They work mostly under the cover of darkness, which is where the name comes from, though some still slosh about by daylight, buckets swinging, carts squealing, and boots soaked with horrors you don't want to name. They pass you now, 2 grizzled figures pushing a wooden cart that drips from the sides. One lifts a sloshing pail and tosses its contents into the cart with a splash that makes your stomach flip. You step back quickly, but not quickly enough. Your boots, once again, are victims of history's worst job. Historians still argue whether night soil collectors were heroes of hygiene or walking disease vectors. They certainly weren't loved. They were necessary, though, without them, Victorian London would have choked on its own filth even faster than it already was. Fun tidbit. Some of that human waste night soil was sold to farmers as fertiliser. Yes, your breakfast journey might come full circle in ways you truly don't want to think about. You cut down a side alley, boots squelching, and find yourself behind a row of tenements. A woman tosses dirty water from a second-story window with the kind of flair only long practice can give. You dodge. Barely. That was probably laundry water. Hopefully laundry. The streets here double as sewers, and though London's now famous sewer system is slowly being constructed, thank you, Joseph Basil Gett, it's not finished yet. Not for years, and certainly not in this neighbourhood. You pass a large wagon with a pile of ashen manure steaming on its bed. A young boy with a shovel is scooping it into sacks. He offers you a cheeky grin. He's a mudlark, a child who scavenges through river muck and street sludge for valuables, nails, coins, bones, the occasional button. If it can be sold, it has value, even if it smells like despair. Further down the road, you see another figure stooped low, scraping dried droppings into a bucket. She's one of the pure finders. What's pure, you ask? It's dog poop, specifically used in the tanning of leather. That's right, poop, gas, profit. You move quickly now, trying to outpace the olfactory assault, but Victorian London has other plans. The stench is inescapable. You breathe through your mouth. Mistake. Now you can taste it, and there, looming ahead, is a cesspit. Open, oozing, and very much a part of daily life. It was meant to be temporary, but temporary in this city tends to stretch into decades. The pit bubbles ominously. You skirt around it and try not to look at the things floating on top. This is where death comes by degrees. Not in grand battles or dramatic plagues, but in quiet inhalations, slow infections, a scratch here, a splash there, a cut that festers. You're one unlucky puddle away from disaster. You pass another worker hunched over a metal grate. He's a tosher, searching the sewers for treasure or at least trash that can be sold. He carries a lantern, a hook, and an expression of eternal resignation. You nod as you pass. He nods back, as if to say, yeah, it's a living, quirky detail. Toshers often wore thick leather belts with pouches to collect their finds, buttons, bits of rope. Even the occasional coin swallowed and, well, rediscovered. Recycling in its most Victorian form. You turn a corner and nearly step into another pit, this one smaller, but no less offensive. Chamber pots, you realise, aren't always emptied responsibly. Sometimes they're hurled, still warm, into the street below. Gardy-loo was once shouted as a warning. These days, it's more of a distant memory. No one warns you anymore. They just toss. And still, people live here, laugh here, raise children here. Because what choice do they have? You finally find a patch of cleaner cobblestone near a shopfront and stop to rest. Your eyes sting. Your coat smells worse than ever. But for now, you're standing on dry ground. A small victory. You watch as a night soil cart trundles away, its load sloshing rhythmically with each bump. One of the men wipes his forehead with a rag you sincerely hope he discards later. He whistles a little tune. He's used to it. You wonder if you ever will be. You're walking again, though trudging might be the better word. Your boots are heavy with filth, and your coat smells like it's been soaked in Victorian despair. But you're on a mission. It's time to find work, or more accurately, time to beg for it. Work in Victorian London isn't found through resumes or polite interviews. It's found through pleading, pushing, and occasionally pretending to be more alive than you feel. And whatever job you land probably comes with a side of lung rot, limb loss, or chronic misery. You ready yourself for the daily lottery of labour. You pass a match factory where young girls matchstick girls. They're called stand in long rows, dipping wooden sticks into white phosphorus. You've heard the stories, the burns, the phossy jaw, where the jawbone literally rots away from exposure. It starts with a toothache, ends with a coffin. One girl catches your glance and gives a half smile. Her teeth are yellowing. Historians still argue whether match factories knew the risks or simply didn't care. Either way, the girls keep dipping, keep dying. You consider applying there, but your stomach turns. Not today. Instead, you head toward the chimney sweep's alley where the soot-covered boys gather. They're small, wiry, and some barely older than 10. Climbing inside a narrow chimney flue isn't for the claustrophobic or the breathing. Many don't make it out. Some get stuck, permanently. A master sweep eyes you and shakes his head. Too tall, too old. You're relieved and ashamed at the same time. You move on, maybe something less deadly. You find a rag and bone man, dragging a cart full of scraps bones, broken glass, bits of metal. He lets you tag along for a while. You help him load a pile of discarded rags that smells like a wet dog in a thunderstorm. You don't ask questions. You lift, you haul, you try not to breathe through your nose. Payment, a halfpenny and a boiled potato. You don't argue. It's more than some get. And then there's the mudlarks again. Children scavenging in the Thames. You consider it. Wading through industrial sludge for buttons and lost coins. Risky, but not entirely hopeless. You crouch at the river's edge and jab a stick into the muck. Something shiny, a spoon, bent, filthy. But metal is metal key. You pocket it. One boy nearby holds up a dead eel. Dinner, he grins. You try to smile. It comes out sideways. You wipe your hands on your coat, regret that instantly, and wander into another alley. You're drawn by the smell of baking. Could it be bread a bakery? Its windows fogged and its doorway warm. Beckons you closer. You knock. A gruff man opens. You beg for work. He stares for a moment, then sighs. Clean the floor. You nod. Anything. You scrub. The floor is sticky with flour and ancient spills. But it's dry inside, and you're not ankle deep in sewage. That's a win. For your labour, you're handed a crust. Not a loaf, just the end bit. It's stale, but you chew slowly, like it's the Queen's own scone. Quirky fact. Some factory owners believed workers were more efficient hungry, arguing that full bellies made people lazy. That's one theory. The other is they simply didn't want to pay for lunch. By late afternoon, your arms ache. Your back sings with every movement. You've earned barely enough to cover a doss house for the night. Maybe. And still, you're lucky. The matchstick girls will go home glowing faintly. The chimney sweeps might not come home at all. The children in the river will cough up black slime and go back the next day for more. Even respectable jobs like factory spinning, textile sorting, or tanning leather come with their own horrors: amputations, chemical burns, deafness, blindness, lung rot. You remember a neighbour who lost 2 fingers to a weaving machine. They gave him half pay and a handshake. You think about going to the workhouse, just to be sure you'll eat, but the stories stop you. families split apart, gruel so thin it might evaporate if you blink, the dead cart making regular stops out back. So you hustle a little harder, lift a little more, scrub a little longer. Your reward. Not dying today. That counts. The smell hits you before you even reach the main street. A right blend of manure, rotting straw, and the undeniable scent of something large and recently alive now being less so. You round a corner and there it is, a wide, brown smear of horse dung stretching across the cobbles like nature's own welcome mat. You try to dodge it, you fail, and now your boot carries the unfortunate souvenir of London's greatest transportation marvel, the horse. Victorian London runs on horsepower, literally. Thousands of horses pull carriages, carts, omnibuses, delivery wagons, and funerals on wheels. And where there are horses, there is poop, tons of it. Historians estimate that by the 1890s, London's horses were producing over 1,000 tons of manure daily and about 60,000 gallons of urine daily. That's a fact you'll never unsmell. The city's roads aren't just dirty, they're alive. You dodge a bloated rat, leap a puddle that's probably more urine than rainwater, and catch your breath in front of a butcher's stall where a pig's head stares at you with a look that says, "Welcome to the food chain." A cart rattles past, its wheels splashing through a slurry of mud and things that should not be named. You step sideways, pressing yourself into the cold brick wall of a tenement. The cart driver yells at a child to move, whips the reins, and the horse grunts, adding another steaming pile to the street behind it. You make your way down Oxford Street, one of the busier thoroughfares. The noise is relentless. Hooves clatter, wheels squeak, hawkers shout, and someone plays a melancholy tune on a cracked accordion. It would almost be charming if not for the squelching underfoot. Here's a fun Victorian tidbit: street sweepers were sometimes paid by the pound of dung collected. Think about that. You're literally earning a wage in poop. There's a boy ahead of you pushing a wide broom and grinning through the grime. He's quick, efficient, slightly too proud of his broom. You watch as he sweeps a generous pile into a mound near the curb. A few moments later, another boy with a shovel and cart comes by to collect it. You can't help but wonder where it all ends up. Some of it, you've heard, gets sold to farmers outside the city. Other bits probably right back into the street tomorrow. Historians still debate whether the rise in street filth led directly to the rise in respiratory illness, or whether London's air pollution just made everything worse. Either way, you're breathing through your scarf again. You head toward a quieter lane, hoping for a break from the mess. But quieter doesn't mean cleaner. It just means the corpses of forgotten dogs lie undisturbed, and fewer carts roll through to splash you. A man passes with a cane and a sharp look. His boots are gleaming, somehow spotless despite the obvious chaos. He's what the locals call a toff middle or upper class, protected by both wealth and distance. You step aside. He does not thank you. He never even notices. You pass a small crowd gathered around a street performer, juggling flaming batons while balancing on an overturned bucket. The crowd claps. A few pennies are tossed. One rolls toward you. You pocket it with all the casual grace of someone who's done this before, and then you see it a freshly washed step. A miracle. You pause, lift your foot, and rest it for just a moment on something clean, dry, and vaguely holy. A woman leans out a window overhead and tosses the remains of her dishwater into the gutter. You jump back just in time. Victorian street life is a constant dance of dodging filth, Horse waste, yes, but also human waste, food scraps, coal dust, dead animals, and the occasional burst sewer. The cobblestones are cracked and uneven, catching every liquid and turning it into an obstacle course. And in the winter, all of it freezes into a dangerously slick nightmare of brown ice and broken ankles. Quirky detail: some businesses paid extra to have the street outside their doors regularly scraped. Not for hygiene, oh no, just so their customers wouldn't slip and sue. A few even installed boot scrapers beside their doors' iron frames to remove the worst of the street before entering. You find one and make use of it. Scrape. Scrape. It doesn't help much. The smell will follow you all day, possibly all week. You lean against a wall, exhaling into the grey air. Your feet hurt, your legs are sore, and you're still coated in the city's unholy cocktail of refuse. But you're not sick. Not yet. You haven't slipped. You haven't been crushed by a cart, bitten by a rat, or arrested for looking suspicious. You're still standing in Victorian London. That's the gold standard of success. You keep walking, one careful step at a time, dodging manure and puddles, ducking under laundry lines and avoiding suspicious crates. But as the daylight fades into the amber flicker of gas lamps, a new feeling begins to curl in your stomach. Not hunger this time. Something colder, heavier, fear. Because now it's nightfall in London and you're in Whitechapel. The gaslights cast long shadows across broken pavement. Fog thickens at ankle height, swirling like something alive. A distant scream, or is it laughter, echoes down the narrow alleys. Somewhere nearby, a bottle shatters. You quicken your pace. Welcome to one of the most dangerous neighbourhoods in the city. It's working class. It's overcrowded. It's desperate. And recently, it's become infamous for a series of murders that chill even the most hardened locals. Jack the Ripper is what the papers call him. No one knows his face. No one knows his name. Just that women are turning up dead mutilated in ways even the press has trouble describing. The whispers have become a roar. Fear creeps into every boarding house and flophouse, every doss and gin palace. Historians still argue whether Jack was one person or several, whether he was a surgeon, a butcher, or a madman hiding in plain sight. The truth is still buried somewhere under these cobbles, and here you are, tiptoeing across them. You pass a group of women standing near a gas lamp, bundled in shawls, eyes sharp. They talk in hushed tones, not about the killer, but about rent, food, survival. They've got more immediate concerns. The Ripper, they say, only kills women, not people. It's a bitter joke, soaked in realism. A constable strolls by, twirling his truncheon. He gives you a once-over, then continues. The police are present, yes, but their presence doesn't exactly inspire confidence. They didn't catch the last killer, or the one before, or the one before that. You duck down an alley hoping for a shortcut and instantly regret it. It's narrower than you thought. The gaslight doesn't reach this far. You can barely see your feet. You walk faster, your boots splash. There's something dripping from a windowsill above. You don't look up. You turn a corner and startle a cat. It hisses, leaps, and disappears into the mist. Your heart does a little jump, then a full somersault when you realise someone's watching you from the shadows. Just a man. Or maybe not. He doesn't move. You don't ask. You step around him and keep going. Rule number 1 in Victorian London after dark: don't engage. The cobbles twist underfoot. You pass what might be blood or wine. or beet juice. That last one's wishful thinking. You hear whispers, then footsteps, then silence. You break into a jog. Quirky historical tidbit. Some locals began carrying onion-stuffed handkerchiefs, thinking the sharp smell might protect them from whatever bad air the killer used. Others lit candles, tied bells to door handles, or simply didn't sleep at all. You spot a public house, its windows fogged, a warm orange glow leaking into the street. You duck inside and catch your breath. It's loud, chaotic, and smells like smoke, sweat, and spilled gin, but it's safe. For now, the barkeep eyes you. You order nothing, just hover near the fire. You listen. The talk is all the same work. Death, the Ripper, and what kind of monster could do such things? You hear theories he's a doctor, he's American, he's the devil. One woman swears it's the butcher on Fulham Road. Another insists it's a foreigner. The tension is thick. You stay until your bones warm. Then, reluctantly, you leave. You can't afford to linger. The fog has settled deeper now. The gas lamps flicker. Every shadow looks too long. Every stranger feels too close. You wrap your scarf higher and keep moving. And as you pass another alley, just a crack between buildings, you swear you see something. A figure, a flicker, a blade. You don't stop to find out. Your legs ache, your boots squish, your stomach grumbles with a familiar emptiness, but you don't even notice anymore. You've survived Whitechapel after dark. You didn't see the Ripper. Or maybe you did. Maybe he passed you in the street, eyes low, hands in pockets, looking just like everyone else. That's the thing about killers here, they blend in. The danger isn't always loud, but let's talk about something equally chilling medicine. Say you get sick, not a little cough, not a sore toe, real sick, fever, chills, swollen glands, something that smells wrong when you breathe, the kind of sick that, in the modern world, sends you rushing to urgent care. Here, good luck. You make your way toward a dispensary, which is Victorian speak for place poor people go to maybe not die. It's dim, damp, and crowded. The waiting room is a bench, maybe two, no cushions, no order, just bodies, hunched and wheezing. One man coughs blood into his handkerchief. Another groans softly and rocks. You sit, you wait. Eventually, a man in a soiled white coat appears. He's a surgeon. Technically, he might also be a butcher on weekends. His tools are shiny, but not because they're clean, just well used. He calls a name not yours. You wait more. When it's finally your turn, he glances at you, frowns, and begins poking your ribs with cold fingers. He mutters something about humours and congested lungs. Then he opens a cabinet and pulls out a bottle of laudanum and opium tincture that cures exactly nothing, but makes you care less that you're dying. Historians still argue whether Victorian doctors genuinely believed in humoral theory or just went with it because nothing else worked. Either way, you're handed a vial and told to rest. Rest. In a house with fleas and thin walls and 4 people to a bed. You ask about the swelling in your neck. He shrugs. Could be scrofula. Could be bad air. Could be your fault for existing in London's lower half. Fun fact, scrofular tuberculosis of the lymph nodes was once called the King's Evil. People believed the royal touch could cure it. Sadly, Queen Victoria isn't in the habit of blessing peasants in the East End. You walk out with a bottle of syrup, a vague diagnosis, and a new cough you didn't have going in. Outside, a man hawks Patent Medicine's miracle tonics. All cure-alls, no regulations, electric syrup, Cures hysteria, flatulence, melancholy, and baldness. You consider it, decide against it. Just barely. You pass a herbalist's window, full of dried roots and mysterious jars. There's a handwritten sign, wormwood for fever, mustard for congestion. Don't ask about the leeches. You don't go in. You're not that desperate. Yet. The truth is, most people don't go to doctors at all. They rely on home remedies handed down from mothers, neighbours, or desperate intuition. Onion poultices, garlic soup, boiled nettles. Anything to sweat the illness out. If you're lucky, it works. If you're not well, you see a man on a corner selling plasters, sticky patches soaked in mustard or turpentine. One size fits all diseases. He's smiling too much to be trusted. Nearby. A child sneezes repeatedly, nose red and raw. No one flinches. Illness is part of the landscape, like soot or rats or regret. You reach a charity tent run by nuns. They offer tea, bread, and sometimes bandages. You step inside. It's warm. You sit for a moment and sip. One sister offers a smile that somehow makes you feel seen. Another man sits across from you, shivering violently. You lock eyes. He mouths typhus. You sip faster. Disease is everywhere. It rides on breath, clings to blankets, lurks in wells and latrines. Victorian London is a petri dish with a postal system. Quirky historical footnote. Doctors once believed miasma bad air was the cause of most illnesses. Which, to be fair, makes some sense in a place where the air can literally peel paint. But it wasn't the air. It was the water, the hands, the lack of hygiene, and the abundance of rats. You cough, once, twice. It echoes in your chest. You try not to panic. You take another sip of laudanum. It tastes like sleep and dreams you'll never afford. You thank the nun and step back into the street. Fog again. Always fog. You wrap your scarf tighter. You walk slower. You're not better, but you're still walking. In this city, that's all medicine ever promises. You stumble out of the charity tent, the laudanum warming your belly like a candle in a wet cave. It's a trick. Of course, a fog for the brain. You still feel awful, but the edges of your misery are smudged now, like the city's skyline behind the gas lamp glow. It's late, and you need to find shelter. There are no cosy inns or warm beds waiting for you. No key to turn, no sheets to pull up to your chin. You've got 3 choices: sleep rough on the street, pay for a doss house, or, if things are truly bleak, knock on the workhouse door and pray they let you in. You turn toward the doss house Victorian slang for a cheap, usually filthy boarding room for the destitute. They're dotted all over London, crammed between pawn shops and pie sellers, shadowed by factories and alleyways. Some advertise with signs that say good rest, but what they mean is no lice refund. The one you find has a crooked sign hanging off rusted hinges. You step inside. It smells of damp wool, old feet, and a lifetime of unwashed humanity. The keeper squints at you. You hold up your coin, a single copper penny. He grunts and points you to the back. You get the cheapest option, the rope bed. Yes, a rope bed. Here's how it works. A row of thick ropes is strung between 2 wooden beams. You lean over it like laundry on a line, arms drooping, head bowed. You don't lie down. You don't stretch. You just hang. Sleep standing up or slumping. Quirky fact, rope beds were so common they earned nicknames like hangover houses. And no, not because of drinking, because you literally hung over the rope. You wedge yourself between 2 other lodgers, One wheezing, one snoring, and let your body surrender to gravity. It's not restful. It's not warm. But it's not the street. Historians still argue whether rope sleeping was meant to deter the homeless from staying too long, or if it was genuinely seen as a humane compromise. Either way, your back will file a complaint by morning. The room is packed. Dozens of bodies sway like lifeless puppets. Someone coughs wetly. Someone else mutters in their sleep. The floor creaks. Rats scurry in the ceiling. You breathe through your scarf again. Not because of illness this time, but to avoid smelling the man beside you, who has clearly not bathed since Queen Victoria's coronation. You close your eyes, not to sleep, really, just to block it all out. And that's when the fight breaks out. A scuffle in the corner, raised voices, a shove, a crash. Someone accuses someone of theft. A loaf of bread, a blanket scrap, doesn't matter. The keeper stomps in, curses loud enough to wake the dead, and drags both men out by the collars. One of them swears he'll kill the other. No one else moves. In this world, a fight is background noise. Unless it's your ribs getting bruised, you stay still. The door slams shut again. The ropes sway. You ache. From your ankles to your eyelids, you ache. And that's when you think, what if you can't pay tomorrow? Then it's the street. And the street, at night, in London, is the city's open wound. You've seen it. Bundled figures huddled against buildings. Newspaper rustling in the wind. Men lying motionless, soaked in rain. Breath clouding faintly in the gaslight. Women curled under stairwells, holding children like shields. One man you passed last week was dead and no one noticed for hours. It's not just the cold, it's the wet. Cold you can shake off. Wet wraps around you, seeps into your bones and makes a home there. And then there's the watchmen, the police, the drunks, the gangs, the ones who steal, and the ones who don't need to, who hurt you just because they can. Quirky little note. Some folks rented coffin beds for a penny more than the rope. Literal wooden boxes lined up in rows. You could lie flat in one. Some said it was good practice for the real thing. You think about that now, as the ropes creak and your shoulders start to throb. You'd give anything to lie down. Just lie flat. You shift. Slowly. One rope groans under your weight. Another digs into your stomach. You rest your forehead on your arm. The room smells like defeat. You close your eyes again, hoping the laudanum drags you under before the lice find you. Tomorrow, maybe you'll earn enough for a real meal. Maybe you'll find dry socks. Maybe the Ripper will finally be caught. Maybe the fog will lift. But probably not. For now, you just hang in silence, together, alone. You don't know when you fell asleep, if you can even call it that. It's more like your body finally gave out, slumped forward over the rope like a forgotten coat. Your neck hurts. Your back hurts. Your knees feel like you've aged 60 years overnight. The room is already emptying when you groggily lift your head. Some of the rope sleepers have vanished. Others shuffle slowly toward the door, mumbling, scratching, coughing. The keeper yells something about get out or pay again. No one argues. You stagger into the street, blinking against the grey morning. A new day, same fog. The city doesn't so much greet you as tolerate your presence. Your stomach growls. Your last proper meal was a mystery potato and a chunk of bread 2 days ago. It's time to find food again, or at least something close enough to trick your body into continuing this whole alive thing. You wander toward the markets, because if you're lucky, you might find scraps, not purchased. No, you don't have coin. but vendors sometimes toss spoiled fruit or trimmings into bins. If you're quick, you can beat the rats. You pass Covent Garden, once fancy, now fading. The stalls here are already bustling with early shoppers, middle-class women in neat gloves, baskets dangling from elbows, searching for apples, carrots, maybe the ever-precious sugar loaf. You linger near the back, close to a fishmonger who's discarding yesterday's unsold catch. It smells like Neptune's armpit, but beggars truly can't be choosers. You snatch a small, squashed herring from the edge of the pile. Not fresh, not exactly safe, but it's protein. Nearby, another vendor tosses out a bruised apple. You lunge for it at the same time as a boy half your size. He's faster. He snarls at you an actual snarl and runs off. You let him have it. He probably hasn't eaten in days either. Quirky fact, London's poor sometimes made bone soup. Boiling discarded meat bones often already gnawed by dogs in dirty water with a scrap of onion. You remember one street cook who added a stolen turnip and claimed it was gourmet. You pass through Spitalfields Market, where a woman sells pies of questionable origin. The joke goes, what's in a pie? And the answer is usually don't ask. Could be beef, could be cat, could be something that once meowed last night. Historians still argue whether those street pies ever actually included cats or dogs, or if that was just middle-class horror stories. But you've seen the stray population drop. That's all you're saying. You keep walking. A vendor calls out, eel jelly. Fresh eel jelly. You don't stop. You're not that desperate yet. You spot a ragged man boiling something in a tin can over a tiny flame. He offers a spoonful in exchange for a favour, lifting a crate, dragging a bag, something like that. You agree. You're too hungry to hesitate. He hands you a spoonful of what might be porridge, might also be glue. You eat it anyway. You thank him and leave, mouthful of grit, heart full of not quite satisfaction. It's not food, but it's not nothing. As you pass a bakery, your stomach cramps at the scent. Warm bread. Real bread. Not crusts or scraps or flour mixed with chalk to stretch it further. You stop, just to breathe it in. The baker sees you. He doesn't speak. Just slides the door shut slowly, and the scent disappears like a dream at dawn. You move on. It's not personal. It's survival. You see a boy with a satchel full of sawdust bread, an actual Victorian staple, made by mixing flour with sawdust to stretch it further. Less food, more filler, but when you're starving, you don't care. He gives you a slice. You chew. It tastes like paper and sadness, but it fills you. Sort of. You sit on a stoop, letting your legs rest, watching the city swirl past. Horses clatter, carts rattle, people shout and push and hurry, and here you are, eating sawdust bread, still wearing the same damp coat, still not sure if you'll make it through the week, and yet you're still here, still chewing, still trying. Somewhere in this filthy, fog-choked, rat-infested city, there's a bakery window waiting for you to pass again. Maybe one day it'll open, but not today. You've barely swallowed the last bite of sawdust bread when the city reminds you rest is for the rich. The streets surge with energy. Again shouts from market stalls, hooves clapping like thunder, and steam rising from cellar grates that vent more than just warmth. You're moving again, mostly because staying still makes you a target. For what hunger? Mostly. But also theft, accusations, police, or worse, being noticed. You head toward Clerkenwell, where the sweated trade crowd into crumbling brick workshops. The doors are always ajar, leaking out the sounds of clacking, hammering, shouting, and the occasional coughing fit. You step into one. The boss eyes you, spits near your boot, and points to a bench where workers are hunched over sewing machines. The air smells of oil and damp wool. You nod, you sew. You're not good, you're not fast, but you're willing. You stitch until your fingers blister, sewing cuffs onto jackets that'll be sold in shops you're not allowed to enter. You don't ask about pay. You won't get it today anyway. Quirky detail. Sweating means outsourcing work to cramped, airless, often illegal workshops where the labour is cheap and the rules non-existent. Some factories even padlock workers inside to prevent them from escaping mid-shift. Fire, pfft. That's someone else's problem. A bell rings. Lunch. Except you don't have any. You step outside and stretch your neck toward the thin, grey ski. Your hands are trembling from effort or hunger. Maybe both. You see a girl nearby no older than 10 peeling a potato with a broken knife. She's barefoot. Her toenails are black with soot. She eyes you suspiciously. You nod. She doesn't nod back. Back inside. The foreman points to a pile of scraps. More stitching. Your neck cramps from hunching. The rhythm of the machine dulls everything else. Needle down, pull thread, repeat. Historians still argue whether these workshops were born of economic necessity or pure exploitation. Probably both. They were opportunities, in the same way a leaky rowboat is transportation. By day's end, your eyes blur. You're dismissed with a half nod and no coin. Tomorrow, the boss grunts. You step back onto the street, blinking against the sudden light. The sky's already dimming somehow, without ever having brightened. A woman stumbles past you, crying softly, dragging 2 children who wear mismatched shoes. One of them has a tin whistle. He plays one note, over and over. You hear a bell, church bells. Time for vespers. You follow the sound, not out of piety but curiosity. A crowd has gathered outside a church-run soup kitchen. You fall into line, you wait and wait. Your stomach knots with anticipation, or maybe just the memory of disappointment. Finally, a ladle dips into a pot and pours something thick into your tin cup. It's pea soup, allegedly. Tastes more like water and sadness, but it's hot and it's yours. You sit on the curb and sip slowly, stretching each swallow like a prayer. A man beside you mutters about the strike's dock workers, factory hands, chimney sweeps. Everyone wants more, he says bitterly. Nobody's got it. You nod. You don't have the energy for words. The soup makes you feel almost human again. Almost. You walk past a pawn shop, in the window boots, gloves, a tarnished ring. You've got nothing to pawn, but you stare anyway. Some poor soul gave up warmth for food today. Or maybe it was the other way around. You think of your coat. You could trade it, but it's the only barrier between your ribs and the wind. Another day. Maybe. Quirky sidebar. Some families had a single coat they passed between them, each one taking turns to leave the house. The rest stayed indoors, hiding from inspectors and shame. You take a turn through Soho, where candlelight glows from behind shuttered windows. The music is different here, softer, slower. A piano tinkles through the walls of a private club. You walk faster. This part of town's not for you. Back to the East End, where everything's louder, cheaper, and slightly on fire. As you cross Commercial Street, a newspaper boy shouts headlines about a fever outbreak in the docks. 3 dead ones, a child. People listen. Then they move on. You reach a fence where laundry hangs limply. A woman wrings out a blouse that's more whole than cloth. She glances up. You need work, you nod. She gestures to a bucket and a pile of shirts. Soap costs extra, she mutters. You scrub in cold water until your hands are red and raw. She hands you a crust as payment. It's dry, it's small, it's something. The fog thickens. Gas lamps flicker on. Somewhere, a street preacher shouts about sin and salvation. No one stops. No one listens. You exhale, slow and deliberate, and watch your breath curl like ghost smoke into the darkening sky. Today, you stitched, you scrubbed, you slurped soup and walked 3 miles. You didn't freeze. You weren't robbed. You didn't fall sick. You lived, and tomorrow you'll try again. You wake on a step, not your step. No one in this city has a step. You just sort of borrow one for the night. It's made of stone, cold as regret, and slightly damp from the endless mist that seeps into everything, even your dreams. You slept curled like a dog, your coat pulled over your knees, and now your legs have stopped speaking to you out of spite. Still you're up. You stretch. Joints pop like cheap firecrackers. You blink into the grey dawn and think, as you always do, what now? Your belly answers before your brain does. But you're not just thinking about eating. You're thinking about not dying from eating. Because in Victorian London, street food is basically a gamble. And you're not great at gambling. You shuffle toward the nearest market alley, where vendors set up makeshift carts on uneven cobbles. Smoke curls up from tin chimneys. A man flips something brown and oily on a skillet the size of a dinner plate. You approach slowly. It's a meat pie. Maybe it cost a halfpenny. You have a halfpenny. You trade coin for warmth, bite in, and immediately regret asking questions. It tastes gelatinous, possibly rodent adjacent, definitely mystery adjacent. Still, it's better than raw turnip. Quirky fact. Some vendors used old candle wax to bind their pie fillings, giving them that signature. What is that mouth feel? Others stuffed pies with expired meat soaked in vinegar to mask the rot. It didn't work. Nothing ever does. You pass a girl stirring something in a large black pot. She calls it sheep's head stew. The skull is visible. The eyeballs are not. You keep walking. A man shouts, "Roasted chestnuts," that seems safe. Then he sneezes directly into his hand and touches the nuts. You keep walking faster. You find a stand selling eels in jelly, transparent, wobbly, cold. They stare back at you. You stare back at them. It's a draw. Historians still argue whether Victorian London street food saved lives or ended them faster. On one hand, it fed the poor. On the other, it fed them cholera. You've heard of a hot pea soup stalls vendors that serve thick, salty ladles of green mush, which allegedly contain peas. You're not convinced. You ask for a sample. He hands you a crust dipped in soup. It's warm, salty, heavy on the pepper. You swallow it and thank him. Your stomach has a brief existential crisis, then settles. You keep walking. At another corner, a boy sells treacle toffee, sticky and sharp enough to pull out fillings you didn't know you had. The kids love it. The adults don't bother. It's a luxury for those with teeth. You consider it. You don't buy. Across the way, a woman sells fried fish out of a cart surrounded by flies. It smells incredible. Or terrible. Possibly both. A customer argues over the price. She slaps him with a spatula. You admire her spirit. Not far from there, a man in a bowler hat is slicing a massive loaf of bread mixed with chalk. It's a cheap trick to stretch flour further, but it's not great for your insides. You take a sample. You immediately wish you hadn't. A group of dock workers sit on overturned crates, gnawing on cheese rinds and boiled eggs, washing it down with ale. You join them at the edge, hoping for scraps. One tosses you a piece of bread, laughs, and says, "Careful, that one's got character." You bite in. The character is mostly mould. The street suddenly erupts in shouting. A cart tips over. A crate of cabbages rolls down the hill like green cannonballs. You dodge one, laugh nervously, and help a vendor right the cart. He doesn't thank you, but he gives you a cabbage leaf. You chew it thoughtfully. Then comes the sound everyone dreads: the bucket men. They carry sloshing tubs of waste from homes and businesses' leftovers, bones, rotted vegetables, and sometimes things you'd rather not think about. Some of it's for pig feed, some for fertiliser, some just dumped into the Thames. The smell punches you like a foggy fist. And yes, for the record, people have been known to rescue food from these tubs. Desperation doesn't know shame. You turn away, heart heavy, stomach heavier, and drift toward the river. The Thames glistens with a layer of oil and unspoken truths. You watch a man wash an apple in it. You can almost hear your internal organs staging a protest, and yet people still drink from this river. People cook with it. People live by it. You step away quickly, almost reverently. The Thames isn't water, it's a threat. Quirky tidbit. During the Great Stink of 1858, the Thames smelled so bad that Parliament literally evacuated. Curtains soaked in vinegar didn't help. They considered abandoning the city entirely. You take one last look at the water, then at the pie crust still stuck to your sleeve, then at the sky. It's time to move again, because in Victorian London, even when you're full, you're never safe. You wander away from the reeking edge of the Thames, stomach groaning, head light, and every breath filtered through the sleeve of your coat. The sky overhead is grey again, because of course it is. You don't remember the last time you saw actual blue. Maybe it's a myth like clean streets or safe drinking water. You're heading toward the main roads, where the city's order tries to reassert itself. Here come the top hats and bustles, the polished boots and horse-drawn carriages. But don't get the wrong idea, just because there's more pavement doesn't mean there's more safety. You've got to watch yourself here too, because now you're among the bobbies, the new kind of police, named after Sir Robert Peel. These uniformed officers walk the streets with stiff backs and even stiffer moustaches. They wear blue coats and tall helmets and carry nothing more than a whistle and a wooden truncheon, supposedly to serve and protect. You're not convinced. You pass two of them now, arms crossed, watching a crowd gather around a beggar who's collapsed near a gas lamp. The bobby pokes him with a boot. "Move along," he says, even though the man can't. So much for protect. Quirky fact. These early police officers weren't armed because people were afraid the government might use them like a private army. But honestly, some of them didn't need weapons, they had power, and that was enough. You avoid eye contact. You're not doing anything wrong. Not exactly. But in this city, being poor feels criminal. You duck into a side street just in case. There's more to watch out for than the law. Thieves roam here too, not the dashing kind with clever smiles. No, these are desperate, fast, and often armed with whatever sharp object was closest to hand. You feel a tug at your coat. You spin. Nothing. Just a boy disappearing into the fog with your crust of bread. You sigh. He was faster than you. Hungrier too, probably. It's hard to even be mad. Historians still argue whether the rise in street crime during the Victorian era was caused more by urban crowding or sheer economic despair. Either way, you're part of the experiment now. You move on, past another set of bobbies, these ones chuckling outside a pub, past a man being hauled into a cart, kicking and shouting, his crime unclear. Maybe theft, maybe just the crime of existing too loudly. You pass a sign nailed to a pole, wanted known pickpockets report at once. Below it, someone's drawn a moustache on the constable's face. You smile for half a second, but then the air shifts. You turn a corner and find yourself face to face with a man in a bowler hat and a too-clean coat. He's leaning against the wall, arms crossed, watching. You slow. He doesn't move. You nod. He nods back. You walk on, but faster now. You know his kind. Not a thief. Not a bobby. Just one of those men who knows things and sells favours, and always seems to be watching when bad things happen. If there's an underground to the city, he lives in it. You try not to think about it. You step back into a more familiar alley, one lined with crates and discarded barrels. Safer, in a way. Because if the police won't help you, and the thieves take what little you have, there's still one more thing to fear the city itself. The buildings loom like watching giants. The fog creeps along the cobblestones like something sentient. Every puddle holds secrets, and every shadow looks like it might contain a body. You pass a corner where you once saw a man bleeding. Not recently, just long enough ago for the stain to remain. And then, like a surprise oasis in this concrete wasteland, you see children playing. They've turned a broken cart into a makeshift teeter-totter. One of them laughs, another yells. That's cheating. You watch, stunned, as joy briefly exists on this street, but even joy is patrolled. A bobby rounds the corner and barks, "Clear off." The children scatter like pigeons. You stand there, alone again. And that's when the bobby turns to you. He squints. "You've been about too long," he mutters. "Where do you sleep?" You shrug. You try to look small, invisible. He doesn't like that. He steps forward, raises his truncheon, but then another voice interrupts. A woman. Stern, older, holding a basket of rags and bread. "She's with me," the woman says. The bobby pauses, then grunts, then walks on. You don't ask her why. She just shrugs. "We help each other," she says simply. "That's all we've got." You nod, and together you walk into the fog, a little faster than before. You follow the woman through winding alleys and side lanes that twist like thoughts you're too tired to finish. Her basket swings lightly with each step, half filled with wrinkled apples and torn cloth. She doesn't speak much, just nods, turns, and expects you to keep up. Eventually, she brings you to a courtyard, tucked behind rows of crumbling flats and laundry lines that sag with the weight of damp underthings. Children peek from broken windows. A dog barks half-heartedly, too tired for menace. The woman points to a nearby stairwell. Top floor. Don't touch the banister. You don't ask why. The climb is steep and uneven, your legs burn by the second flight. At the top is a narrow door with peeling green paint and a brass doorknob that's given up trying. Inside, the space is cramped, slanted, and full of other women, some younger than you, some much older. They look up, assess you in one breath, and return to their tasks, sewing, always sewing. The air hums with thread and breath and soft, sore sighs. You're handed a blouse. Stitch the hem. Someone murmurs, neat and tight, no blood. You nod, sit, sew. This isn't a shop. This is a home seamstress den, the underbelly of London's fashion world. Dresses stitched for boutiques that you'll never enter. Gowns for women who wouldn't see you if you were on fire. Historians still argue whether this kind of labour empowered women or simply exploited them further. You'd argue, but your needle just snagged and you're bleeding on the cuff. You press your thumb to your mouth and keep sewing. Quirky detail, some seamstresses in the city went blind by 30, their eyes ruined by long nights, bad light, and worse expectations. You're already squinting. The woman who brought you here returns with the tin mug of tea. Don't sip too fast, she warns. It'll shock your gut. You obey. The tea is weak and warm, mostly water with a ghost of a leaf in it, but it's comfort. For a moment, it softens the hard corners of your day. One girl across from you starts to hum. Another joins. Soon, there's a gentle melody lacing through the clicks of scissors and the hiss of breath between stitches. You almost smile, but then the landlady stomps up the stairs. "Rent's due," she announces, voice like a whip crack. The humming stops. The women reach into skirts and satchels and thread-worn pockets. A coin here, a button there. One woman offers a handkerchief she's sewn lace onto. The landlady scoffs but takes it. "Tomorrow," she says to the rest, or "out you go." She stomps down. The silence is louder than her boots. You finish your hem. It's not perfect, but it's serviceable. Someone nods and hands you another piece. Time passes. Outside, the light changes from grey to ash. You can't tell if it's afternoon or just another colour of morning. At one point, someone sets out bread with dripping a mix of fat and salt spread onto crust. You each get half a slice. You chew it carefully, reverently. The woman beside you asks, "You from Whitechapel?" You nod. "Mostly." She just says, "Stay west of Aldgate at night." That's all I'll say. You file that away with the rest of your survival notes. Avoid the Thames. Don't trust pie. Never make eye contact with anyone holding a sack of eels. You sew until your fingers throb. Later, the sewing slows. The chatter dims. One girl falls asleep upright, needle still in hand. The rest of you stretch, yawn, and lie wherever there's space. You curl on a bit of floor next to a window that barely shuts. The fog creeps in like a curious cat. You pull your coat tighter. As your eyes close, you hear one last conversation I heard the Queen's ill. "No, that's just gossip." Well, even queens get old. Still better off than us. You drift off to the sound of stitches and sighs, wrapped in a world that barely notices when a girl like you stops breathing. But tonight, you're breathing. You're warmish. You're fedish. And in this city, that's a victory. You wake up to the soft click, click of a needle still working somewhere in the dark. The light in the room is murky, more suggestion than substance. Someone must have stirred the fire, though it's mostly cinders now. A faint warmth lingers, like a memory you can't hold on to. Your limbs protest as you unfold yourself from the floor. There's a moment of confusion. Where are you? Whose breath is that? Whose foot is in your face? But then the fog in your mind clears just enough to remember sewing den. Top floor. Don't touch the banister. You slip out quietly, stepping over tangled limbs and abandoned thread. You leave a thank you whisper in your wake. Back on the street, the city greets you with its usual cheer damp air, uneven cobbles, and that particular scent of wet smoke and horse waste. You walk aimlessly for a while. Not because you don't have anywhere to go, though. To be fair, you don't, but because the city feels different today. Charged. You can't put your finger on it. Then you realise there's no fog. That should be a relief. It's not, because without fog, you can see the soot streaking every building, the grime oozing from every windowsill, the coal smoke rising from every chimney like angry fingers. London, in daylight, without mist, is somehow more grotesque. You pass a shop window where a gaslight flickers dimly, even during the day. The flame behind the glass makes a strange noise like a hiss, or a whisper. People trust these lights. You don't. You've heard the stories. Gaslights explode. They leak. They suffocate. Quirky tidbit. Some homes caught fire simply because someone sneezed too close to a leak. One poor man lit a cigar near a gas lamp and took the entire staircase with him. You turn the corner and walk into a plume of black smoke. It pours from a vent like the building itself is exhaling regret. Your throat burns. You cough hard enough to see stars. Around you, people cough too. It's a chorus, a background hum to Victorian life. Historians still argue whether the city's constant exposure to coal smoke shortened average lifespans by decades or merely contributed. Spoiler, it definitely did more than contribute. You pass a row of tenements and see laundry strung between windows, now stained with soot. What's the point of cleaning if the sky itself is dirty? Then it happens. A sudden shout, a crackle, a burst of heat. You spin. A house is on fire. Not dramatically. Not yet. But a curtain in the second-story window is glowing orange. Flames licking at the sill. A woman screams from above. Children cry. And everyone runs. Not to help. Away. Because fires in this part of London spread fast, and fire brigades don't always come, especially not to the poor streets. You back up, heart pounding, as the fire hisses and roars. Someone throws a bucket of water. It hisses uselessly. You duck behind a cart, heart in your mouth. And that's when you see it, a man standing across the street, staring at the blaze, not in horror, but in calculation. You don't know his story, but you know that some landlords see fire as the opportunity, insurance, if they're lucky enough to have it, new tenants, if not. Eventually, a bell clangs in the distance, fire brigade, late as ever. You leave before they arrive. As you walk, you keep one eye on the rooftops. Many homes are lit by gas, and every flickering flame feels like a threat now. You pass a tenement with char marks around the ceiling vents, another with its windows boarded but smoke stains still running down the brick like tears. Night falls slowly, turning the grey of the buildings into deeper charcoal. That's when the gas lamps come alive. A man walks past, lighting each one with a long pole. The glass domes glow softly, casting puddles of yellow on the stones below. They're beautiful, in a way. Comforting, almost, until you remember they're fueled by the same invisible menace you've been dodging all day. Quirky fact. Some Londoners believed gaslight exposure drove people mad. The term gaslight eventually evolved into something much darker, but even now, standing beneath one, you understand the eerie feel of that cold, flickering glow. The air smells sharp, chemical, like someone is holding a match beneath your nose. You pass a woman huddled near a grate, trying to warm her hands on air leaking from some underground vent. She looks up, eyes glazed. You toss her the crust you'd forgotten was in your pocket. She doesn't thank you, just eats. You find a stoop that isn't taken, not yet. You sit, you breathe. The lamplight dances on the stones. Far off, the fire bells ring again. You wonder how much of the city will still be standing by morning, and whether you'll be part of what's left. The city doesn't sleep, not really. Even when the streets empty and the shutters close and the lanterns flicker their final breath. London keeps breathing beneath the silence. There's a constant hum of footsteps in alleys, whispers through floorboards, the occasional cough from someone dreaming in rags. You lie awake on your stoop, back against cold stone, coat pulled up like a second skin. You count the chimneys above you. 5, 6, 7. Most spitting out smoke, some not. You wonder which ones mean someone's cooking and which mean someone's burning. Eventually, the chill creeps into your bones and convinces you to move. You rise, stiff as a gravestone, and walk not because you have anywhere to be, but because the alternative is freezing to death in your sleep. You pass a window with lace curtains, lit from inside. You pause. Through the thin glass, you see a body laid out on a table, wrapped in linen, candles burning at the corners, awake, quiet, dignified, probably not cheap. Quirky fact: Victorian funerals were so elaborate that even poor families would bankrupt themselves to rent coffins for the service. Yes, rent. They'd reuse them like stage props, because burial was too expensive for ownership. You walk on, the scent of wax and death still lingering. Not far away, you come to a churchyard. By day, it's a green oasis. By night, it's where the city's secrets are buried, and not always with permission. You step through the gate and onto the stone path that winds between leaning tombstones. Names worn down by wind and time. Some graves are cracked open. Not dramatically, just enough to know they've been disturbed. You don't linger, because you've heard the stories of the resurrectionists. Grave robbers who dug up fresh corpses and sold them to doctors for dissection. The demand was high, the law was fuzzy, the practice was common. Historians still argue whether the authorities turned a blind eye or were simply too overwhelmed to intervene. Either way, you walk faster. You pass a statue of an angel, her nose chipped, her wings blackened by soot. She doesn't look peaceful. She looks tired. A figure stands at the far end of the cemetery, tall, unmoving. You freeze. Then the wind shifts, and it's just a scarecrow. You laugh, half embarrassed, half relieved, but only half. You slip back into the street and follow the scent of smoke. Not danger this time, comfort. It leads you to a funeral home, its wooden sign swinging on rusty chains. A man in a black suit sits outside, smoking a pipe, looking like he hasn't blinked since Tuesday. He nods at you. Looking for work, he asks. You shrug. It's your only currency. Clean the viewing room, he says. No questions. No noise. 2 farthings. You nod. He leads you in. Inside. The air is thick with lilac perfume and regret. A coffin sits open at the far end. A woman inside. Hands folded, face powdered like a biscuit. You look away. You sweep the floors, dust the shelves, polish the candelabra. Your stomach turns when you realise what's under the cloth on the side table, a used embalming kit. You've read about these in penny serials, but seeing one up close is different. You finish quickly. The man presses 2 coins into your palm, then escorts you out without a word. You don't look back. Instead, you head toward Bunhill Fields, another graveyard, but older, quieter. Here lie poets and preachers, plague victims and paupers. You sit on a bench under a skeletal tree. Someone's carved M+T into the wood. You wonder if M and T made it out of this place. You rest your head back and close your eyes. A sudden voice jolts you. You staying here tonight? You open your eyes to see a boy, no more than 12, clutching a tin mug and a sack that's probably his life. His shoes don't match. His face is half hidden under a mop of dirty curls. You nod. He sits beside you, then offers you the mug. Soup, he says. Stole it from the workhouse. They didn't miss it. You sip. It's watery, but warm. Name's Sam, he says. You offer yours, or what you go by now. Sam grins. Don't let 'em bury you too soon, he says. Had a mate once. Caught cholera. They put him in a box before he stopped coughing. You nod, because you've heard worse. Victorians were so afraid of being buried alive. Some coffins came with bells. Little ropes that ran up through the soil, just in case. Quirky tidbit. Some people insisted on being stabbed through the heart post-mortem just to be sure. Sam yawns, curls up on the bench beside you. You wrap your coat around you both. His head leans against your arm. In the silence, the city exhales again, and for once, you sleep. You wake to the sound of hooves, sharp, rhythmic, urgent, echoing off cobblestones like a drumbeat for the uninvited. The sun hasn't fully risen yet, but London's already decided it's time. A cart clatters past, piled high with crates of fish wrapped in burlap. The smell hits you like a slap. Sam's already gone. No goodbye, no theft, no trace. Just a cold patch where his shoulder pressed against yours. You stretch slowly, joints creaking, and try not to look too obvious about having slept on a bench. People here don't take kindly to the clearly homeless even though they're surrounded by them. You head toward the public pumps, one of the few places in London where you might get a drink that won't kill you immediately. The line is already forming children with tin cups, old women with jugs, one man with a bucket and a black eye. You wait your turn, then fill your hands and sip. The water is cold. That's good. It tastes faintly of metal and moss. That's normal. You remember what they say, don't drink from the river. Don't drink from the standing wells. If it smells sweet, it's probably full of death. Stick to the pump streets if you're lucky. Quirky detail. In the 1850s, Dr. John Snow traced a cholera outbreak to a single pump on Broad Street. He removed the pump handle, and the outbreak vanished. It was the start of modern epidemiology and the end of a few people's favourite drinking spot. Historians still argue whether it was Snow's data or just timing that solved the crisis. Either way, people kept dying long after. You walk back toward the alleys. There's a crowd gathered near a building with peeling white trim and crooked windows. Someone mutters, "Another one." You sidle in to see. It's a body, small, curled, covered with a sheet, but one tiny foot sticks out, grey and still. A woman sobs softly nearby. No one else says a word. You drift away. You pass a bakery, the scent of warm bread like a miracle. You want to stop. You want to stare, but you know better. Instead, you watch as a smartly dressed gentleman steps out with a newspaper and a fresh roll, neither of which he acknowledges as luxuries. He crosses the street, and the crowd parts for him like water around a stone. You follow his path, not because of him, but because it leads to Covent Garden. where carts of vegetables spill their produce into open air. Potatoes, onions, carrots shaped like crooked fingers. You spot one roll under a stall, muddy but edible. You snatch it quick and keep moving. A porter shouts after you, but he's not fast, and you disappear into the maze of stalls and crates and gossip. One stall is selling fresh milk from tin containers. You watch a woman buy a bottle and later see her shake it and chalk dust separates from the liquid. It's a common trick. People add chalk or water to stretch milk, often spoiling it entirely. Babies get sick. Some die. Still, it sells. People buy it because it's all they can afford. Like you chew your stolen carrot slowly, savouring its bitterness. You could almost laugh how something so bland feels like a feast. You stop by a rag picker's cart. He sorts clothing by colour, stains, quality. You offer your coat. He frowns, sniffs it, then shrugs and tosses you a scarf in trade. It's too short and moth-eaten, but cleanish. You walk on, lighter in one way, heavier in others. The city gets louder by mid-morning. Iron wheels screech. Horses snort and stamp. Street preachers shout about sin and sulphur. One man climbs onto a crate and claims the Thames is a punishment from God. Another yells that Parliament drinks imported water while the poor drink death. You nod. It checks out. You wander into Smithfield Market. The smell of blood and brine thick as fog. Animal carcasses hang on hooks. Butchers shout prices. Flies dance like they're invited. You edge past a stall selling offal pie and try not to think about what offal actually means. Quirky detail. The Victorians ate nearly every part of an animal. Tongue, liver, lungs, even eels boiled in gelatinous jelly. You've seen it. You've smelled it. You've passed. There's a barrel of oysters nearby. Once a delicacy, now cheap street food. Because the river's filled with them and no one's regulating who eats what. You see a girl gag after slurping one down. She swears, wipes her mouth, and grabs another. You leave quickly. By noon, the heat rises not from the sun, but from the sheer mass of people. You duck into a church doorway, grateful for the cool stone. You sit beside a statue of an angel missing its nose. Someone's carved initials into its wing. A priest nods at you but doesn't speak. You're glad. You sip the rest of your pump water, now lukewarm. You wonder how long until it makes you sick, or if you're one of the lucky ones today. The bells toll, lunch for some, nothing for you, but you've made it this far, still standing, still breathing, still in the fight. Barely. You drift out of the church when the bells stop, like they've been holding you in place with each toll. The street greets you with its usual blend of chaos and indifference. Someone shouts about sawdust bread. Someone else screams about salvation, and a dog chases its own tail with more purpose than half the city's residents. Your legs ache. Your stomach whines. But your ears, they're alert because you hear something odd. Music. Not the ragged fiddle tunes of street buskers, or the off-key hum of alley girls sewing to pass the time. No, this is rich music. Grand. Snooty. You follow the sound until it leads you to the front of a grand townhouse with columns like stone soldiers. Through a crack in the front door, you glimpse a chandelier and polished floors. Servants glide like ghosts in stiff collars. You stand there too long. A footman notices. You scurry away. Behind the house, down a narrow passage, you find the real entrance, the servants' entrance. The pulse of the mansion is loudest here, clanging pots, shouted orders, the occasional insult lobbed with expert precision, A girl bumps into you, arms full of linens. You're looking for work or scraps. You pause. She rolls her eyes. Both. Then she drags you inside. The kitchen is a battlefield, steam rising from pots the size of bathtubs, meat hanging from iron hooks, flour dusting everything like sad snow. You help scrub, chop, stir, mostly scrub. You get yelled at twice, nearly scalded once, and finally handed a bowl of thin porridge with a lump of something unidentifiable at the bottom. You eat it anyway, quirky tidbit in grand homes. The upstairs dined on delicacies game birds, jellied tongues, puddings shaped like castles. Downstairs, the servants often lived on boiled scraps and tea leaves reused 6 times. You help carry a tray up to the drawing room, careful not to breathe too loudly. Inside, a gentleman is discussing new sewers being planned for London, how they'll flush the city clean, cure cholera, save the poor. You try not to snort. Historians still argue whether the Victorian push for public sanitation was driven by compassion or just the unbearable smell. You hope it's the former. Back downstairs, the cook throws a lump of dough at your head. You're not staying, she says flatly. Can't afford more mouths. You nod. Of course. Outside again. The air feels heavier. You head west. You pass workhouses, those looming brick boxes where desperation is warehoused like old furniture. You've never been in one. But you know the rules. No family visits, no freedom, no kindness, just labour. You see a man sweeping the courtyard. He looks 50. He's probably 30. A guard eyes you from the gate. You keep walking. Ahead, you spot a healer's sign, Mrs. Allen Tinctures, Tonics, Tooth Drawers. You knock. She opens the door slowly. Eyeglasses like bottomless spoons. Lips pressed thin. She doesn't smile, but she lets you in. Shelves line the walls, jars filled with herbs, powders, suspicious liquids. The air smells of vinegar and mystery. You ask about the headache behind your eyes. She presses a finger to your temple, mutters something about bad humours, then hands you a tincture of laudanum. You hesitate. She shrugs. Take it or don't. It'll either fix your pain or make you forget you had it. You sip it. It burns, then soothes. Then the world softens at the edges like a fogged window. Quirky detail, Victorians use laudanum for everything coughs, fevers, heartbreak, boredom. It was a miracle. And also extremely addictive. You thank her. Wobble outside, and the city seems slower now, less jagged. Even the shouting seems musical. You sit beneath a soot-blackened statue of Queen Victoria herself. She looks judgmental, or maybe just tired. You think about the palace, how warm it must be. How clean. Do they know what the river smells like? Do they know what a rat sounds like when it steals your bread? You doubt it. You walk again, and now you see them. The cracks. Not in the stones or the walls, but in the people. Eyes too hollow, hands too thin, kids too quiet. This city is grinding itself down. The newspapers say it's a golden age. The literature says it's progress. But you live here. You know the truth. Historians will probably argue over whether the Victorian era was a triumph or a tragedy. You don't argue. You just survive it. That night, you find shelter beneath the arches of Blackfriars Bridge, tucked between 2 broken crates and a sack of coal someone forgot to steal. You press your new scarf around your shoulders, your last farthing in your shoe, and your eyes to the stars you can't see through the soot, still breathing, still watching, still here. You wake to the rhythm of dripping water. Not poetic, not soothing, just persistent. A leak above your head tapping onto the crate beside you. Every drop like a reminder that this city never stops eroding you. You sit up slowly beneath the Blackfriars Arch, spine cracking like an old gate. Your scarf has slid off in the night. It's damp now, useless. You look out at the Thames. It's wide, sluggish, greedy. Its grey surface reflects nothing, no sun, no hope, just the dull weight of smoke above. You wonder how many people the river has swallowed. How many bodies drift just beneath that surface, claimed by cholera, despair, or something in between. You cross the bridge slowly, not because you're weak, though you are, but because it's quieter here. Fewer people, less noise. Just the city exhaling its toxins around you like a lazy beast. On the other side, you pass a line of vendors setting up for the day, their carts creaking as they unload wilted cabbages and bread hard enough to chip a tooth. One man hawks miracle biscuits that are really just flour and sawdust. Another sells cough cure from a bottle that smells like gin and regret. You keep moving. The air is sharp with coal smoke again. A child sneezes behind you. Another coughs so hard she collapses. No one stops. You bend to help, but her mother waves you off. She'll be fine, she says. She always is. You're not sure what fine means anymore. Eventually, you reach an almshouse, brick, square, and somehow more hopeful than the mansions from earlier. These were built by charities, churches, and people rich enough to feel bad. A woman in a black bonnet gives you a roll and a nod. No questions. It's the first food you haven't stolen in days. You sit on a bench outside, eat slowly, and watch as people come and go, some limping, some whispering, some with bandages where limbs used to be. The world keeps turning. You keep watching. You overhear talk of reformers, people demanding new labour laws, safer factories, better housing. You wonder if they've ever set foot in a Whitechapel alley, if they know what it feels like to sleep beneath your own cough. Historians still argue whether these reforms truly helped, or just quieted the noise. You sip from a shared tin cup of broth and decide it's probably both. Across the street, a boy dances for coins. He's good light on his feet, clever with his hat, but behind his eyes, there's a clock ticking. Even children in this city are running out of time. You walk again, not fast, just far. You pass a woman selling matches. She's older than stone and whispers something in a language you don't know. You buy one, not to light, just to hold, to remember you can, if needed. At dusk, the sky turns the colour of old bruises, purple and yellow and grey all mashed together. You find yourself back near the river, watching the last ferry pull across the black water. You think about leaving, but you don't, because the city has its claws in you now, not just your clothes or your money, but your story. You're part of its grimy poetry. You sit by the embankment and stare into the smoke-hazed horizon, listening to the faraway hiss of a steam engine and the closer murmur of someone praying beneath their breath. And for the first time in a long time, you feel something like stillness, because somehow, against everything, you're still here, still upright, still you. The night settles over London like a thick wool blanket, heavy and warm in places, threadbare in others. The wind quiets, and the noise of horses and boots fades into memory. Somewhere, a church bell marks the hour, but you're too drowsy to count how many. You're tucked beneath the arch again, this time with a slightly drier scarf, a slightly fuller belly, and a flickering match cradled in your palm like a promise you won't need to keep. The sounds of the city drift outward and upward, hushed voices, distant footsteps, the soft hush of water brushing stone. They blur into a lullaby of sorts, one only London can hum. The river laps at the banks with lazy persistence. You breathe in slowly and feel the soot settle just a bit gentler on your skin tonight. The sharp edges of the day begin to round off, softening into the haze of memory and dream. The girl with the matches, the baker's cart, the stitched blouse, the taste of borrowed tea, they fade gently, like lanterns flickering out one by one. Your eyes grow heavy, your heartbeat slows. The city will still be here tomorrow, doing what it does, grinding, smoking, grieving, surviving. But for now, you sleep, and for once, that's enough.